You can see this curvature being way better defined right here. In here, you can also hit like M and connect at center, and then you totally fix the projection. I actually projected normals from this already low poly model, which was always interesting to me. Can you project normals from a higher definition mesh that also has a normal map of its own? Kind of can't wait to see the whole thing in action in Unreal Engine. Hi guys, my name is Barodante, and welcome back to John version 4, which is the protagonist of the horror game I'm working on. And yeah, very technically it's the 4th version, but in reality it's the first one. Before that it was just iterations of different custom metahumans. But right now I imported the metahuman parts into Blender, so we have the head, the body parts, and the pants, as well as like we had a hoodie somewhere with the bones and everything, so there's plenty of stuff. But we mostly use all of this as just the information to follow as a reference, aligning to. And in this video I really want to finish working on the main part of the character, meaning finishing all the actual geometry details of the jacket. But before we start, let me show you guys what I actually improved since the last time we saw John. So right here is the new low poly version of the boot. Without actual work done on any textures, except for I just projected normals and photo texture, which is something we did in the last video, and I just repeated it on a new low poly model. I actually did it by hand. This is a fully custom, really made by hand, no quadrimesher involved kind of retopology here. So I really like it, the way, you know, all the topology is following the flow. If we compare it to the previous version, you're gonna see the tremendous improvement. So you can see the old version is 862 triangles with a bunch of unnecessary triangles going on right here. But if we look at our meshes from the top, you can see this curvature being way better defined right here with much more polygons dedicated to it, where in here is super choppy. Same thing happening in the back right here, like even worse in here. And yeah, way better alignment of polygons for like actually bending the tip of the boot, which is the main animation area of the boot. And all of that, you can see that the new retopology is actually only 460 triangles. So it's like 2 times less and looking 2 times better. A good example of why it makes sense to make a manual retopology and really put your thought into it. So yeah, that's the way I went with it. Like if we look at just the geometry, we can see how I went with like showing a little bit of the shoelace tip right here. So it would have some kind of little detail followed by a bunch of other fake details that would look better. Like, of course, I'll clean it up in Substance Painter soon. But overall, I think it looks better than a bit of a messy thing going on in here with like a lot less polygons. So I think it's gonna be pretty cool. At the bottom, also a way better optimization. I mean, I could do something like this in here as well, but also I could do everything else as well. So that's what I did. Yeah, I think this is gonna be the perfect boot. We'll add, like we have normal maps and color here. We'll add like roughness texture later and stuff like that. When we get all the main parts of the outfit ready, we'll send all of this over to Substance Painter and work in there. So that's for the upgraded boots. Really excited about them. I think it's really cool. Like it's just right. Will be fun reworking the design of the boots a little bit, since this is just the ground truth I needed. But the design, I really feel free to augment it a bit and removing orange stuff and everything. So now to the jacket. I also did full retopology of it, as you guys can see. And this is not just the retopology. If we go to the maximum subdivision level, you'll see that I brought over all the details the best way possible from our 3D scan. But what's really exciting about this particular remesh is that I actually made a true fold right here. We can see it for the hood. So this is a real fold, like a completely fleshed out actual hood with the thickness of it and everything, like legit stuff. So yeah, I was trying to put more polygons in here to have nice believable curvatures. I think it's necessary to have this kind of definition at the top. Like this right here is the actual geometry that will be in the game, plus the normal maps that we will project later. I think this is a pretty good level of definition of everything. Maybe even happen, I would add like one subdivision level for like a cutscene kind of situation, because like metahumans have outfits with this level of detail. If we're really in the close-up, why not switch to this kind of look? We always have an option like that here with multi-resolution. I will be animating this hood nicely because now it's a true separate object. So what we need to do to push this forward is I will be erasing in sculpt mode all of these pockets right here, and I will create separate objects that will be actually like separate pieces of polygons here with separate, maybe higher definition details projected from a different scan of this jacket. When it was actually hanging on a coat hanger, I had a better chance scanning much higher fidelity of these details, as well as like maybe this thing. So I'll add a bunch of like separate objects, including like many metallic elements like these nipples right here, as well as we had metallic details somewhere in here as well. So I'll look for those and I'll add certain objects in here as well, and it will liven up the whole design, making it not just one sculpture shape, but actually something that looks like a real piece of clothing like this. So this will be cool, but also, of course, I want to go through generally the whole jacket and, sculpt in some of the sharper little details here and there to bring in a bit of a higher definition. Since, as I mentioned, this scan wasn't particularly sharp, so, going through everything with like stuff like a crease brush, adding more definition to things. One last thing I want to mention about what I did is, of course, the face sets that look very interesting here. So face sets are kind of like persistent selections or masks for just polygons that you select. They only work within the sculpt mode. The greatest benefit of it is, of course, like for instance, if I'll be working on like the hood, I would be able to just quickly, hide away all the elements I don't need at the moment and work on this. Or if I want to specifically work on the inside wall of the hood, I defined it as well right here, so we can easily reach everything we need here. So that's pretty cool. I think it'll make things much faster. As well as I made like a special set of face sets right here, so I would be able to separately work either on this side of the zipper area or on the other side. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, that's the plan. Also, like I didn't really mention it, but it's clear that I added thickness to the jacket, so I used an actual solidify modifier and then projected the details using weight paint and only applied the weight paint on the side where I needed to project the outside of the scan, while the inside is only loosely following the shape without actually having the same details of everything. And overall, I optimized it to make sure there's no extra polygons where we don't need them. So pretty much we already have the main mesh that is game ready. We only need to finish the details and textures and it will be good to go. It looks exactly right with nothing unnecessary present here. So let's start. At first I'll go ahead and remove all these elements right here that we are gonna be applying separately. Okay, so I cleaned up all the pockets, kept all the cool wrinkles that will be next to the pockets. Same thing I did here with the button, also with this one right here. And yeah, the last thing I did, I also used this mesh filter brush in the smooth mode. And pretty much what it does is it literally applies a smooth to the whole mesh at the same time, only it's easy to overdo. And I'm applying it in a small enough radius to remove these little glitches I have here from reprojecting into higher resolution of the mesh. I have a little bit of these like flat polygons, like I already removed most of it, just gotta make sure I do it in small steps. And yeah, I think now with this little amount of smoothing, we get a much cleaner surface. I literally don't think we lost anything at all, because it just wasn't there. thought this kind of brush would be useful. Clearly it's not a very well-defined stitch right away, but if you apply certain extra work to it, I think it's a pretty good base for a seam. And yeah, what's also cool in being able to quickly achieve a good result is first you go with like positive value, and then you go on top with the negative one like this. And after blurring it out, it really does look like a seam like this. Alright, it's pretty good, I think. Okay, so it's been quite a while now, working on all kinds of seams here and other details like bringing things together. The hood is now more or less resting on the shoulders without floating anywhere, like looking a lot more grounded here. That I don't think is a problem. And by the way, looking at this hood, like overlapping a lot and generally things being like very complex in terms of cavities in here in this fold, really happy I'm using an actual multi-resolution object, so I'll be able to project normal maps with no issues at all, because it won't have to like cast rays onto the surface or anything like that. It doesn't care about that because everything is perfectly projecting inside of the multi-resolution hierarchy. So wanted to show you guys one cool thing about this flatten brush. I think any sculpting app actually has this way of working. So normally it's like pretty much like removing details, making the surface flat, right? But if you negate it, if you hold control, you sort of you know, you can bring back a lot of those details that maybe your 3D scan kind of smoothed out a bit. I think I'm gonna be using it a lot. Finally dialed in this brush for seams. Really, you don't need like a specific sharp seam. You need, you know, to just be able to do something like this. Because that's like the point of the seam. It kind of like forces the cloth into a specific place with tiny consistent wrinkles. So you need some of that pretty much, and that's it. Alright, here we go. I just went ahead and quickly made some UV maps and projected them. Just gave it a try and it seems to be working pretty well. Yeah, that's pretty dope. Anyway, I think this is a pretty good start. Next, I'm gonna bring in those pieces of the jacket that I want to see in here. So I'll just re-import that scan of the jacket on the coat hanger and create a few rectangles with thickness and project details onto them. Then I'll put them on top of this jacket. So let's do that now. Oh my god, these details are so much better. It's a shame, like, it feels like it's right here, you know, to somehow transfer over here, but not at all. Like, how are you gonna do that? Considering they're all riddled with a very different, much bigger wrinkles and generally the different shape. But certain elements can definitely be transferred. So yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and create a few low poly meshes here. Alright, got myself some pockets. I think they look pretty nice. Of course, we'll have to clean up the border on that plane because it looks pretty weird there, but we'll see about that. Now to position them. So I'll start by separating. Do I have to go inside the edit mode? I think I do. Mesh, separate by loose parts. Bam! Almost perfect. Okay, now let's sculpt them into place more precisely. So it's kind of cool how I baked normals from a very distorted shape of the jacket hanging flat in an odd shape comparing to when you actually put it on. But like it totally works out fine because now I captured those normals and I'm bending and moving them around exactly the same way. It's kind of cool how you can actually totally do that. I hope. Unless this video will be about discovering that it totally isn't. But overall, like, a tangent normals means they, like, pick up the original normal of the mesh and then change it a little bit the way they're programmed to change, based on what the original normal of the polygon is. And what I'm doing here is simply I'm moving this base polygon into a different place. So all of that extra information of the normal map will be providing the detail from the new base, from the new position of it. I just need to make sure I don't like stretch things too much or something. So yeah, the funny thing is I am actually making a mistake right now, which I will fix the next day in this video. The problem was, while everything I just said was correct about the fact that I can bake the smaller detail normals and then move the bigger polygons into a new shape, so all the smaller normals will be working from new angles of these bigger polygons, you still need to make sure that these smaller details are not big enough to be weird in the new shape. And in this case, I had a few very strong curvatures on the edges of the pockets that looked very weird and dark because they were supposed to be like very strongly curved and I sort of made them flat. And in this case, I just don't have small enough polygons to fix that curvature since I made these pockets so low poly. So the next day I will fix that. Alright. So, I'm gonna call it a day. I did notice some issues right here with the topology not following this pretty big fold. I wonder, like, will I be able to adapt to it using just the triangulation that would follow it better? So I'll give it a try later. Generally, this is something I can like reproject on a bit of a different mesh if it really becomes necessary. We'll see about that. But overall, I feel like I can tone it down and it will look just fine. just make it a little bit nicer generally later. But yeah, overall I feel like this is something that needs to be addressed a little bit in here as well. And yeah, in the armpits also some of the triangulation should be done. Not sure exactly how to work about it, meaning I do need to work with quads for the multi-resolution mesh. But then for a low poly thing, stuff like triangulation direction is important, so I wonder how exactly it's supposed to go. I wonder if like just smoothing it out may actually improve things tremendously. Like yeah, it's just not gonna be a glitch that way, I guess. But yeah, the pockets are here. Decided to go with more of a rectangular design, although still tilted a little bit like this. These are like the pockets for your hands or something. I don't know what this is, but it's nice. Yeah, also changed the shapes of these guys. I just started them from scratch. I'll texturize them completely in Substance Painter and it'll be all cool. But yeah, overall, the thing is here. This is a bit of a weird shading here. I don't know why. On to the next day. Alright, welcome back. It's been a few days actually. I spent yesterday fixing a lot of the mistakes and making some nuanced decisions, seeing how things would work best. And also, of course, I added this shirt right here that's showing through just like that. It's just a real quick multi-resolution object like this with very basic geometry. It just like folds over a little bit and the rest I deleted. And here you can see some excessive redundant geometry for sure, like that's way too much geometry for what it is. So what I did after this, I actually copied everything into this separate object where nothing is a multi-resolution object anymore. And I modified, like triangulated and modified some of the geometry, paying attention to the UV maps and everything in order to have like the best results. Also, I kind of forgot to triangulate like these pockets right here. So as far as my practice shows, you can really just hit Control T, it's gonna be the beauty triangulation, which I think in most cases it means it connects the shortest path, but maybe sometimes it would look at the curvature it follows. And in here I can see how this triangulation in this particular case changed things. So what I would do here, I simply select, Control Delete, and then connect the other two vertices that I wanna have connected in this situation. And it never introduces any problems with UVs or anything. I assume tiny differences in the normal map look would occur, but overall, like, I did a lot of modification, like a lot of modification of triangulation on the jacket, especially in this area, because I really wanted to support this big fold in here. And you can see I connect, like, I didn't delete a single vertex in this case, I just connected the vertices differently. And it changes a lot, like, this is a huge thing. I never really played too much with triangulation, because mostly I was always working with CGI, like 3D animation, and not so much with the games. And right now it felt like a great experiment. If we compare to the previous version, in here you can see how this was a complete mess, and pretty much triangulation caused exactly these connections to happen. So this really did not feel right with what the normal map is supposed to be showing. Of course, the best approach in all of this would be to have separately a very high definition sculpt and separately a triangulated, fully ready to be projected onto model for the game, as well as all the other LODs. Like this is like LOD 1 that I'm creating right now on this side. But yeah, I really found it super useful, super beneficial in this particular case to go specifically with multi-resolution because of this complex fold of the hood right here. I could technically like sculpt it when everything is like raised and not touching each other all that much, but I feel like it would really make a toll on the actual design. Like right here would really follow the true 3D scan placement of this hood. I think there's a lot of value to that, to make it look truly natural and real with a certain weight to it. It feels like a real hood. And if I would like raise it up and then bend it down, it would look very different, I think. And like I would have to do it with every LOD and everything, and that would be kind of a weird way to do it. So I projected everything on a quad mesh, but then did some modifications based on this particular LOD and how its triangulation looks. I think it's a pretty good approach. What do you guys think? If you have experience with this, like, is this a good idea or not? But yeah, also I removed some of the excessive polygons even after this, like right over there. Starting with this point, we can see there was like 3 rows of polygons and then they merged into just 2 rows of polygons. So I removed 1 extra polygon in there. Could technically go even further than that, but I feel like maybe I could use that topology to bend things a bit better to make them closer to each other. In any case, I can always do that again. What's interesting though, when you do that, like if you merge 2 vertices, like to the center for instance, then you will see this happening. The connection is just gone, but then you can only select this vertex together, like it's in 2 places, but it's the same vertex. So in here, you can also hit like M and connect at center, and then you totally fix the projection. It becomes just the way it was. Yep, goes right into place, so it's no problem there at all. Of course, it's like in areas where it's a flat surface that doesn't have a lot of actual geometry detail relying on these vertices, which is exactly the place you would want to save some polygons. Like this is pretty flat and feels like redundant in here, so maybe I'll tone it down in this area as well. But also I may do the opposite and actually add some waviness to it to make it a bit more complex looking. It is like LOD1 after all. But yeah, when it's flat and when you don't mess with the actual seams of UVs, that's really not a problem. You can really get away with a lot of modifications to the topology this way. It really feels kind of like I still continue on modeling the actual shape of the jacket here, because sometimes it's like actually quite an artistic way of thinking about it, you know? Sometimes you would find like this triangulation that would like bend things a little bit weird, and you would think maybe like this way it would be better, you know? And in this case, I'll probably keep it this way. But really, what we're tackling here is like the geometry of the complex folds of this cloth with its physical properties and everything. Like sometimes making the silhouette too round and perfect would actually take away from the complexity of the way the shape appears. Like if I would go back and instead of this, I would get like this, maybe it's actually better. You know, like it's adding this extra complexity here. Maybe it's not a bad thing, but then I just kind of look at the normal map and it feels like it tells a different thing here. Like there's a pretty straight area in here going on. So I probably will go this way. So yeah, just going all over the mesh after just automatically triangulating it and seeing what works best for this particular case. A pretty cool thing, never thought about this part of model creation. It felt pretty cool. Yeah, another thing I added was these metal like buttons. They're actually all the same model, just of different proportions or sizes here and there. I kind of repeated what was going on the actual jacket. But yeah, the geometry is as simple as it gets. Like I'm kind of faking it in here as well. It sort of looks three-dimensional, but there is like a very simplified thing going on in the center. And what's interesting, I actually at first modeled it a bit more precisely like this, and I did project like a high poly subdivided version of this mesh onto it and got this normal map. But then I decided, since this version on the right is LOD1, like it really doesn't make sense to make like all that extra polygon row in here in these buttons, you know? Like at this distance, you can really see we benefit from nice and round shapes, especially since most of them are next to the head. But yeah, in order to make this version, I actually projected normals from like this already low poly model, which was always interesting to me. Can you do that or not? Meaning, can you project normals from a higher definition mesh that also has a normal map of its own? Will all of that information transition onto the new mesh? And yeah, it will, which is pretty cool. You can easily project, I guess, from one LOD onto a lower LOD, and it will send all the information as well. So that's pretty useful. And yeah, one last thing I'll mention that I did, actually these pockets I totally reprojected and UV unwrapped. By the way, I clearly UV unwrapped everything nicely. So everything is now in proper seams that I made manually. I thought I should make an effort for the main character, you know? It's like most parts have their own separate UVs and separate textures, like these guys have like a 2K texture, I believe. The buttons have a 1K texture, or like literally one button has a 1K texture, which is obviously too much, but it's fine. It's fine to have like a source material like this, I mean. And yeah, this is probably also a 2K texture. I will probably refactor these things later, especially like when I'll be exporting from Substance Painter. I will definitely be exporting, like this will be, I don't know, 256 pixels texture or something like that, I don't know. But yeah, overall, I think we're really getting a pretty good quality here. There will be some final adjustments later when I'll assemble the whole character together in the final, like this LOD look. In terms of like, sometimes I feel like right here, like it's a see-through model a little bit. So some of the polygons could be pushed together to, you know, cover through holes like this. As well as I did that before in a previous version, but like, you know, just merge those vertices together so there wouldn't be some weird see-through hole in this area. Definitely no need in having that. A good idea is to check what exactly it does. So it just merges, but they kind of seem separate, and when you press on it, you can see how this is one vertex altogether, so you can merge it as well, and it will be a more of a consistent thing there. And yeah, in Substance, I'll probably paint like a black color onto this with like removal of specular as well, so it would be one of those holes. Again, some excessive polygons on like the second layer in here. Clearly, we don't need as much of all of this going on in here. But who knows, like I'll really first need to see how those pants and everything, like you kind of see it there. But seeing it there doesn't mean you need all these rows, right? But at the same time, with less rows, it may have a hard time following the curvature of the outside layer since it's pretty thin. But what I could do is I could just taper off like this a little bit to make it like thickening as it goes closer to the center there. So yeah, something like that would definitely be a thing to do. The pockets, they also have like a geometry like that. It's kind of like they're thickening there, just to make sure nothing like floats in space in case there's extra space going on. So it's nice and clean in there, I think. So yeah, that's the new look. The boots now kind of feel a little bit higher poly than they maybe should be, but then again, it's like it really works well for the like defining good curvature of the boot right here, which is the biggest thing. And in here it's like right there, like borderline reasonable amount of polygons for the strong curvature that it is. So I don't know, maybe it makes sense to have boots like this. Can't really find a good place to remove a lot of polygons from those. So yeah, that's the update and the final stage for this video. I was planning on actually starting making the hair, but I feel like it would make sense to have a separate video for that. So that's exactly what's coming next. I really think the video will come pretty soon, so stay tuned. Will be very interesting to actually do the hair. Like, this is so interesting to me to see how it will work out. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye! Honestly, kind of can't wait to see the whole thing in action in Unreal Engine. Did not expect to have such a sort of a breakthrough in the way I approach models, textures, and like normal map projections in here. Like, it feels very different and like really cool. Excited to see the final result soon.